Tracing fishy risks with blockchain tech amid the COVID-19 pandemic. NTV4X.com News ID 52AAF7 4 minutes ago. Bitfinex wants to recover Bitcoin stolen from them in 2016, even if that means paying to find the hackers responsible for the attack. COVID-19 is the most devastating plague to ravage humankind this century. Every day, the number of patients infected with the coronavirus is NBSP rising NBSP globally and taking the highest human toll in the United States. The highly infectious virus was first contracted in November 2019 in Wuhan, the capital city of China's Hubei province, through horseshoe bat to human contact at the Huanan seafood market. NBSP Many of the initial COVID-19 patients were either stall owners, market employees, or regular visitors of the market, who rapidly developed a severe respiratory illness. Despite the market being shut down on January 1, 2020, the virus has since rapidly spread airborne during exhalation, talking and coughing via microdroplets small enough to remain NBSP aloft in air, spreading to over 200 countries and regions around the world. NBSP seafood is a major source of nourishment, providing sustenance to billions of people as well as fish and animals worldwide. It is considered to be one of the world's largest industries, NBSP generating NBSP a value of about $152 billion in 2017, with more than half of this trade originating in developing regions. At present, China NBSP accounts NBSP for nearly 75% of the global seafood and aquaculture market in terms of both volume and value, while the second largest market share is held by India, followed by Indonesia, Chile, Norway, Japan, South Korea, the US, and the United Kingdom. NBSP seafood industry-related malpractices. NBSP At the same time, the seafood industry is plagued by malpractices, including fraud, product mislabeling, tax evasion, price fixing and poor management of fisheries. Overfishing. In 2018, almost 90% of global wild fish stocks were either exploited or NBSP overfished, and this number is NBSP estimated NBSP to grow. Catches. Approximately 60% of the seafood NBSP taken NBSP from the ocean is discarded, lost, or wasted in supply chains. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. NBSP representing NBSP up to 26 million tons of fish caught, valued from $10 billion to $23 billion annually. COVID-19 related risks in seafood supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the challenges and inadequacies of the global seafood supply chain, NBSP according NBSP to a report prepared by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. With the emergence of the pandemic, seafood businesses shuttered their doors overnight, processing facilities ceased or significantly curtailed operations, restaurants shut down, and markets subsequently dried up. As entire fishing fleets hung up their nets, products were left stranded across the globe, hindering the export of seafood products. Furthermore, countries imposed border and trade restrictions and ramped up seafood inspections. This added to industry problems as COVID-19 mysteriously continued to spread to fishing boats and processing facilities, causing great health and financial repercussions worldwide. China's General Administration of Customs began mass testing seafood imports at ports and blocking shipments from fisheries that NBSP reported NBSP infections among workers, particularly after samples of Sustainable Shrimp Partnership, a group of certified shrimp importers from Ecuador, and Global Salmon Initiative, a group of certified salmon importers from Chile. NBSP tested NBSP positive for the novel coronavirus on both the inside and outside of packaging. The 190,000 residents of Dalian, a fishing community with a population of 6.7 million in the Liaoning province, Chinaâ, were also rescreened for COVID-19 and quarantined after a second wave outbreak linked to a seafood processing firm was NBSP reported NBSP following the first outbreak 100 days prior. The intense testing of seafood, other products, and people for the coronavirus has tripled customs clearance times at some major Chinese ports, hindering global seafood trade flows. In Argentina, health officials are struggling to piece together how the disease infected 57 of 61 healthy sailors while at sea for 35 days. Alejandra Alfaro, the director of primary healthcare in Tierra del Fuego, NBSP said it's hard to establish how the crew was infected, considering that for 35 days, they had no contact with dry land. Supplies were only brought in from the port of Ushuaia. The virus entered somewhere. We have to think that it was human contact or contact with merchandise, products, supplies. Alfaro added, we know that for 35 days, no one, or any new input, got on the ship. Obviously something happened, perhaps there has been some degree of contagion inside the boat that was not registered. In the US, the first major COVID-19 outbreak occurred aboard the Seattle-based American Seafoodsa American Dynasty. The huge fishing vessel hosts an onboard fish processing factory and operates in the Pacific Northwest, which has the highest seafood production, at 25% of global landings. Similarly to the Argentinian case, nearly 75% of the onboard crew, 92 out of 126 NBSP, tested NBSP positive for COVID-19, even though all fishermen tested negative when they boarded the ship. American Seafoods is one of the biggest players in the billion-dollar fishery for Alaska pollock, which goes into products like the McDonald's Filet-O-Fish sandwiches. A recent report NBSP states that the prevalence of COVID-19 on ships is likely to be significantly underestimated, and strategies are needed to assess and monitor all passengers to prevent community transmission after disembarkation. More than 120 workers at Oregon-based Pacific Seafood, a Newport seafood processing plant, also NBSP tested NBSP positive for the virus in an outbreak so large it contributed to Oregon's highest single-day count of new cases since the start of the pandemic. The owners of a seafood processor in Juneau, Alaska thought they did everything right to keep their business safely running during the pandemic. However, even with mandatory COVID-19 screening and a 2-week quarantine for out-of-state staff, the virus still found its way into the facility. Alaskan seafood processors are consistently seeing large outbreaks as the rise in COVID-19 infections continues, NBSP according NBSP to state officials. Dr. Joe McLaughlin, Alaska's state epidemiologist, NBSP said NBSP Alaska is currently experiencing 3 large, separate outbreaks of COVID-19 in the seafood industry. These outbreaks are reminiscent of the meatpacking plant outbreaks in the lower 48 and stress the importance of vigilant symptom screening and prompt facility-wide testing in congregate work settings when index cases are identified. Seafood safety in the U.S. Ensuring the safety and quality of seafood products in the U.S. is a joint effort of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and state regulatory agencies. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has the primary federal responsibility for the safety of seafood products in the U.S., which adopted a NBSP regulation NBSP that requires all seafood processors to utilize a science-based system of preventive food safety controls known as Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. NBSP, however, other federal agencies also play a role in ensuring the safety of certain seafood products. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA, has a regulation called NBSP Country of Origin Labeling, designed to ensure that seafood available in large retail stores is labeled to identify its country of origin. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Fisheries Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, is responsible for the management of the nation's fishery resources in the U.S.'s territorial waters and also operates a voluntary seafood inspection and grading program. It requires traceability for seafood at risk of illegal fishing and seafood fraud through the U.S. Seafood Import Monitoring Program, which currently NBSP applies NBSP to 13 species of imported fish including blue crab, cod, and tuna tracing them from the boat to the U.S. border. 90% of seafood consumed in the U.S. is imported, yet only 0.1% is NBSP inspected NBSP by federal agencies. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, conducts foodborne illness investigations, provides recommendations to the medical community and a guidance NBSP for employers and workers performing seafood processing operations in onshore facilities and aboard vessels offshore and uses the Oracle blockchain and the IBM cloud to NBSP support its COVID-19 data collection efforts. These federal agencies work cooperatively to provide consistent standards and regulations for seafood products and the various industry sectors that fish, farm, harvest, and deliver them to consumers. Food safety has become even more critical during the pandemic, with FDA spokesman Peter Castle NBSP stating we have no evidence that COVID-19, a respiratory virus, is transmitted through food or food packaging. Seafood fraud in the U.S. The U.S. seafood industry's fraud-related issues have exacerbated with the pandemic. In response, the Department of Justice NBSP established a new task force and has urged people to report COVID-19 related fraud. Study after study has proven the existence of fraud in the U.S. seafood industry. The Office of the Attorney General in New York NBSP found that over 25% of seafood at supermarkets in the state was mislabeled. A study by University of California in Los Angeles and Loyola Marymount NBSP found that nearly half of the sushi served in Los Angeles was not what it was purported to be in its seafood fraud investigation. The Ocean Protection Foundation Oceana NBSP found that 21% of fish tested a species not included under the existing federal traceability program were NBSP mislabeled. Beth Lowell, Oceana's Deputy Vice President of U.S. Campaigns, NBSP explained it's clear that seafood fraud continues to be a problem in the U.S., and our government needs to do more to tackle this once and for all. Seafood fraud ultimately deceives consumers who fall victim to a bait-and-switch, disguises conservation and health risks, and hurts honest fishermen and seafood businesses. Seafood traceability from boat to plate is critical to ensure that all seafood sold in the U.S. is safe, legally caught and honestly labeled. Mislabeling, fraud, and tax evasion. Blockchain technology authenticates the ownership of seafood, makes them traceable, and facilitates their digital transfer. However, some seafood companies found this technology to be irrelevant to their operations. Philip Carawan, the owner, president, and CEO of Captain Neela's Seafood Incorporated, is NBSP serving a jail sentence after pleading guilty to the Department of Justice in federal court on charges that his company, at his direction, fraudulently mislabeled over 179,872 pounds of foreign blue crab meat worth more than $4 million as a product of USA. Blue crab is a popularly exported species native to the waters of the western Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. From at least 2012 to 2015, the company NBSP sold NBSP counterfeit crab meat to wholesale clubs such as Costco and Sama's Club as well as major retailers. A Virginia blue crab supplier was also accused NBSP of cutting a total of 398,000 pounds of blue crab harvested in the Chesapeake Bay with cut-rate crab meat from Indonesia and Brazil while labeling it as a product from the United States. The meat was worth about $14 million. Roy Tusilo Sr., his son Roy Tusilo Jr. and their food processing and distribution companies, Anchor Frozen Foods Incorporated and Advanced Frozen Foods Incorporated, have pleaded NBSP guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud for importing 113,000 pounds of squid and selling it as octopus to more than 10 grocery stores. Carlos Rafael, the Codfather is serving a jail sentence for NBSP selling NBSP more than 782,000 pounds of counterfeit codfish as well as tax evasion while he was in charge of a large portion of New England's fishing fleet. Minfa Seafood Corp's U.S. subsidiary M Seafood is being investigated by the U.S. federal authorities for violating national trade laws. The company evaded anti-dumping taxes on 57,700 tons of frozen warm water shrimp worth $643 million transshipped from India to the U.S. through Vietnam. Price fixing and collusion. Blockchain technology allows direct trading of assets by providing trust in transactions and reducing uncertainty through its use of trustworthy self-executing code. From the perspective of competition policy, this technology NBSP creates NBSP opportunities to enhance competition and efficiency, but also introduces risks of anti-competitive conduct as well. The top 3 leaders in the North American shelf-stable seafood industry, whose canned tuna fish product sales increase during times of economic distress, are Bumblebee NBSP owned by Taiwan-based Fangchun Formosa Fishery Company, one of the top 3 global tuna traders. Starkist NBSPA owned by South Korea's Dongwon Group. Chicken of the Sea NBSPA owned by Tri-Union Seafoods of Thai Union Group. NBSP. These companies not only trace their tuna products via blockchain technology, but are also members of the World Economic Forum's NBSP Tuna 2020 Traceability Declaration. Nevertheless, each NBSP pleaded guilty NBSP to criminal price-fixing charges after Chicken of the Sea blew the whistle to NBSP avoid NBSP paying steep criminal fines. Earlier this year, Chris Liszczewski, the former president and CEO of Bumblebee Foods, was NBSP sentenced NBSP to 40 months in prison and given a $100,000 fine. Conclusion. With the emergence of the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations NBSP published NBSP a report titled A Blockchain Application in Seafood Value Chains to raise governmental and international awareness on the role of blockchain in tracking seafood mislabeling and fraud, as well as NBSP supplying reliable data and product origin in the seafood industry NBSP in order for mainstream adoption of blockchain to occur. The report has NBSP guided NBSP the seafood industry into the global dialogue on seafood traceability and issued the first ever global standards for tracking seafood products from point of origin to point of sale in order to verify the authenticity of the food item and validate the sustainability efforts of the producer. So far, product standards body Marintrust has NBSP announced NBSP plans to mandate recording of key data about fish byproducts for traceability and outlined its vision for blockchain's role. Many seafood companies have joined blockchain initiatives, such as IBMA's blockchain-based food trust, Invisibia's whole chain system, the VE Chain blockchain traceability platform, Australia-based Two Hands and Norway-based seafood Chinaâ. Nevertheless, according to 2 recent studies, there is still a need for a global NBSP network NBSP of real-time human disease surveillance systems, which can be NBSP-based NBSP on the use of blockchain technology to track the spread of COVID-19 via the seafood value chain across the world. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://me.mt5.expert.advisors.